Let's go Lions! Here's the latest news straight from behind the scenes for you. A lot has been happening around here, and with the recent news that shook the web, it has left Lions fans hopeful of getting this star for next season. I'll give you all the details firsthand, but first make sure to hit the like button to stay well informed. There's a lot to unpack about a possible blockbuster move that could change everything for this team. Let's get right to it. Big news just dropped in the NFL. Cleveland Browns star Myles Garrett, yes, that Myles Garrett, has requested a trade after 8 incredible seasons with the Browns. We're talking about the reigning NFL Defensive Player of the Year, a guy who has reached double-digit sacks in 7 consecutive seasons, including 14 or more in each of the last 4 years. This is the kind of player who doesn't just make a difference, he transforms a defense. And this is where it gets interesting for the Lions. Pro Football Focus recently named Detroit as one of the top potential landing spots for Garrett. Imagine that for a second, Garrett lining up on one side, Aiden Hutchinson on the other. Opposing quarterbacks would be shaking in their boots. But let's be real, getting a player of Garrett's caliber wouldn't come cheap. ESPN's Diana Rossini reported that one NFL general manager believes it would likely take a first-round pick and a second-rounder or 2 third-round picks plus a player. Plus, Garrett is on a hefty $25 million per year contract and would likely want a new deal from any team that trades for him. Still, think of the positive. Hutchinson had 3.5 more sacks than any other Lions player in just 5 games last season. That shows how badly we need another consistent pass-rushing threat. Adding Garrett would instantly elevate our defense to one of the best in the league. Plus, with new defensive coordinator Kelvin Shepherd in the mix, the potential is off the charts. Financially, the Lions are actually in a great position. They have the cap space to absorb Garrett's current contract, which comes in at $20 million this year and $25 million next year, totally manageable for a team that wants to compete. The real question is whether Brad Holmes, who has always emphasized building through the draft, would be willing to give up those precious first-round picks to make an all-in move. It's a gamble, no doubt. First-round picks are the lifeblood of any successful franchise, especially when you start paying out big contracts to your star players. Taking 2 years off first-round picks would put a lot of pressure on Holmes to land lower-round picks to keep the roster balanced and competitive. But here's the thing, when you have the chance to land a generational talent like Garrett, sometimes you have to roll the dice. So, Lions fans, I'm throwing it back at you. Would you trade 2 first-round picks for Myles Garrett? Or is the price too high, even for a player of his caliber? Let me know in the comments below. I can't wait to hear what you think. Now let's talk about a big decision the Lions need to make this offseason that could have a big impact on our defense going forward. So here's the deal. Derrick Barnes, one of our standout linebackers, is set to hit free agency this spring. If you followed the Lions closely over the past few years, you know that Barnes was a 4th-round pick in Brad Holmes' first draft class. He came out of Purdue with all the right traits, athleticism, versatility, and a relentless motor. It took him a while to develop, but the coaching staff, led by Dan Campbell, did a fantastic job bringing him along. Coming into the 2024 season, Barnes was finally ready to take on a bigger role, primarily at the Sam linebacker position. This allowed him to showcase his pass-rushing skills and also prove that he could hold his own in coverage. Unfortunately, things didn't go as planned. A routine cut block by Cardinals tight end Trey McBride ended his season prematurely with a knee injury. This was one of the first in a series of injury setbacks that really tested the Lions' depth on defense. Before the injury, Barnes was a key piece of a defense that was coming into its own early in the season. His PFF grades reflected that solid performance, with a respectable overall defense grade of 71.8 and a strong run defense grade of 77.2. Losing him hurt the front 7, and by December, we were relying on practice squad linebackers to fill the gaps. Now here's the big question. Should the Lions re-sign Derrick Barnes or let him walk in free agency? Let's break down the pros and cons. On the plus side, Barnes is a perfect fit for the Lions' defensive scheme. He brings positional flexibility, can rush the passer, set the edge against the run, and drop into coverage when needed. If new defensive coordinator Kelvin Shepherd maintains a similar style of defense, having Barnes opposite Aiden Hutchinson would be a huge asset. The downside? Well, the knee injury is a concern. He tore his PCL and MCL, and while modern medicine has made those injuries less of a problem, there's always a risk. Plus, the Lions have to consider looming contract extensions for stars like Hutchinson and Kirby Joseph. Budgeting wisely is key, and every dollar counts when you're building a championship roster. So, is there mutual interest in bringing Barnes back? I'd say there's a good chance, but don't be surprised if other teams, like Aaron Glenn's New York Jets, come calling. They might be willing to invest more money to solidify their defense. As for cost, I'd predict Barnes could land a 1- or 2-year deal worth around $5 million per year. This would give the Lions a chance to see how he recovers from his injury without making too much of a long-term commitment. Personally, I think it makes sense to bring Barnes back on a short-term deal to prove himself. He's shown enough on tape to warrant another chance, and playing a key role on a contender like Detroit could be just what he needs to secure a bigger contract down the road. Now, I want to hear from you, Lions fans. What do you think the Lions should do? Should they re-sign Derek Barnes to a short-term deal or let him walk and fill the position via the draft or free agency? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Okay, let's talk about the buzz that's circulating around the league right now, Cooper Kupp. Yep, you heard me right, Cooper Kupp, the 2021 Offensive Player of the Year and Super Bowl MVP. On Monday night, Kupp announced on Twitter that the Los Angeles Rams have officially informed him that they're going to trade him. It sent shockwaves through the NFL world, and now everyone is wondering where he'll end up next. Here's where it gets really interesting for us. ESPN insider Jeremy Fowler reported on SportsCenter that league executives expect the Lions to be one of 4 teams with serious interest in Kupp. Along with the Steelers, Chiefs, and Commanders, our Detroit Lions are firmly in the mix. And honestly, it makes a lot of sense, right? Think about it, Kupp has an instant connection with Jared Goff. These two came into the league together with the Rams, went to the Pro Bowl together and were part of some potent offenses. Throw in Brad Holmes, who played a key role in drafting Kupp when he was with the Rams, and you can see why this idea is gaining traction. Oh, and let's not forget that Kupp's agent, Ryan Tallmer, is also Goff's agent. Talk about a small world, right? But here's the kicker, Kupp's contract. It's a hefty one. We're talking about a deal that might scare some teams considering his recent injuries and age. That's probably why a trade might not be the most likely scenario. Instead, there's speculation that the Rams could release him right before free agency to clear cap space. And if that happens, Detroit could be a great landing spot without having to give up draft capital. From a football perspective, Kupp would be a terrific WR3 for the Lions. Imagine him lining up with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams. That's a nightmare for opposing defenses. He brings veteran leadership, elite route running, and a knack for making big plays. Adding a weapon like Kupp could elevate this offense to an even higher level. Of course, all of this depends on how things play out in the coming weeks. Will the Rams find a trade partner or cut ties with Kupp completely? And if they do release him, will the Lions make a move? There's still a lot of uncertainty, but one thing is for sure, there's legitimate buzz surrounding Detroit as a potential destination. What do you think about the idea of bringing Cooper Kupp to Detroit? And don't forget, if you enjoyed this update, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future updates. Go Lions!